So first off, it's fantastic to see you, Jim. We missed just seeing your face. And first off, I just want to ask how you're doing.
I'm fine. I live a great life in the town of my alma mater for both undergraduate school and graduate school. I teach a course here at the University of North Carolina in the communication school. And since I moved here from Southern California, several of my family, adult children, grandchildren, etc., have moved here to join us in Chapel Hill. We have a large and growing pod, and I have tickets to the basketball games, which might get better. So it's a great life. And if you told me a long, long time ago that 50 years after leaving Chapel Hill, I would wind up back here as a teacher in the department where I attended graduate school, that I would dine pretty regularly with the chancellor of the university, that I would have a personal friendship with the governor of the state, etc., I would have said, "Now that's not possible," but that's the life that I lead. So it's very good.
It's great to hear. I told people, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I got a Jim Lampley interview," and the first responses were a bunch of legendary quotes from you, and then how the hell did you do that? You're probably wondering how did I do that? I remember reading an article saying that you are teaching in North Carolina, and I was like, I saw an interview on YouTube with someone asking you about I can't remember which fight it was. It was the guy's name was Jorge, I think, and he was talking about a Johnny Tapia fight, and I was like, how the hell did you find Jim Lampley? And I looked up, I was like, how can I contact Jim Lampley, because you mean so much. You mean so much to the boxing world and just the world in general, I should say. So I got a bunch of questions for you. I won't take up too much of your time, but it's great. It's great to hear you're doing good. And so yeah, let me look at some of the questions that people got for you. So a lot of them were just a bunch of great quotes from you. Vitaly Klitschko is roughing Lennox Lewis up, and then Manny, yeah, Manny Pacquiao is rearranging Oscar De La Hoya's beautiful face. And then yeah, and then someone says, how in the world did we stop hearing his voice? Was it a contractual thing or what? That would be my question, because honestly, there is a need for Jim Lampley in commentating.
Well, I was surprised, not surprised that the cadre of cell phone salesmen from Dallas who bought the world's most meaningful entertainment company, Time Warner, and instantly eliminated boxing on HBO. I had met their management people before they completed the deal to buy Time Warner, and I knew that AT&T was not going to be interested in continuing boxing. But if you had said to me, I'll be honest, if you had said to me at that moment, none of the existing streaming services for boxing, nor remaining major cable television networks which program the sport are going to make you a significant or meaningful offer to go on the air and call their fights, I wouldn't have thought that would be the case. But that did turn out to be the case. I had not had a single really meaningful offer, other than there was a moment several months after the demise of boxing on HBO when I signed a contract with Triller to call the expected fight between Teofimo Lopez and George Kambosos. The fight was eventually postponed or canceled because of an injury. Triller wound up evaporating into thin air. It's possible that Triller evaporated because they made with me a deal that turned out to be bad for them. It was a a costly deal. There was no indemnity for them if the fight happened to go away. They had already written the check for me to call that fight, and I don't know whether that check was instrumental in driving them out of business or whether they just collapsed of their own weight. But nothing ever happened with Triller after that. And as I said, none of the other major streaming services or networks which cover boxing ever made me a significant or meaningful offer. So for whatever reason, I was not in a position to continue my career calling fights. I was surprised, but that's what happened.
Would you still be interested in calling fights? Like if you got an offer tomorrow from someone saying, do you want to commentate fights again? What would you say?
I'd be very selective. There's no reason for me not to be selective at this point. I have a life. I have all of the logical satisfactions that you look for. I am at an advanced enough age that probably nobody's looking at me and saying, okay, well, he could call our fights for the next 20 years. But
you're pretty sharp. You're pretty sharp.
Obviously, I'd consider any meaningful offer from any meaningful programmer of televised boxing. Just aren't that many of them. And those which are in existence appear by my lights to have positive relationships with the people they have calling fights at ringside. They must feel like those are the right people for them, and more power to them. On they go.
Mm-hmm. I made a video.
I watch a lot of fights. I watch the fights that I can reasonably access via satellite here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So I still have a sense of what's going on, but it's been a while. If somebody were going to make me an offer, they would have to take into account that it's been more than 4 years since I've called a fight.
Yeah, but still, like I said in my, I made a video on HBO saying how seeing you, and you're 2 years older than my dad. You were born in '49, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're 2 years older than my dad, and you still seem, like I was saying, the most recent interview, you still seem as sharp and as eloquent as ever. So I feel like you could definitely still do a great job. And yeah, but let me read another question.
I don't think I'm senile. I'll
oh, definitely not, definitely not. That's why, yeah, you sound the exact same way and act the exact same way as you did back when, like, in the 90s and 80s, man. It's still looking great. But
I hope so.
Yeah, one of my friends said someone needs to tell Eddie Hearn and DAZN and ask them why the most talented voice in boxing isn't a part of the team. And then my friend has some really good questions saying, do you think HBO Boxing will ever come back?
Well, no. The network is now a part of a conglomerate that's owned by AT&T. AT&T, upon achieving control and management of HBO, the single most immediate and significant decision they made was no more boxing. You would have to ask them why. I don't really know the reason why they were as adamant as they were about getting the network out of boxing. And so I think it's 100. If you talk to the people who were in upper management back during the last several years prior to that particular merger / acquisition taking place, they would have told you that this network is never going to be under their ownership, the same as what it is now. And some of the programming might look the same, but the general outlook is never going to be the same. And I get that. When I was working for commercial television networks in the late 1980s, I was honoring a contract at CBS Sports. I was anchoring the daily and nightly news at KCBS TV in Los Angeles. I had the opportunity to go to work at HBO. And a friend of mine who was a movie star, who was capable and had fun advising me what to do at that time, said to me, Lamp, you need to take this HBO gig because that's the one place where you'll never be selling soap. And I understood that because the soap selling element of commercial television had gotten in the way of my editorial prerogatives more than once. And what he was saying is, at HBO, you can be adventurous, you can tell the truth, and you can approach everything about this sport in the way in which you want to do it. You won't be in the pockets of the promoters or anyone else who has a monetary interest in the sport, because HBO, Time Warner, they're bigger, and that will be your platform and your safety base. And all of that was true. The 30 years I spent working for HBO are my most treasured broadcasting experience. And overall, I worked for 6 different networks, so I had a lot of different experiences. There was nothing else like working for what is, in the eyes of most intelligent observers I know, the artistic pinnacle of television during all the years when I was lucky enough to work there. So I'm interested anytime in the opportunity to continue to call fights, but I can't imagine in my own mind what platform I could ever be offered that would be as satisfying and as nourishing to my soul as the ringside chair at HBO was. That was a special world and a different world than any other television experience I had.
Well, there's one I was thinking of if you'd be interested, Pro Box TV. It has like John Pascal fought in there recently. It has Paulie Malignaggi, Antonio Tarver, Roy Jones, and
They're probably, that they come from my background. They come
hmm.
from 15, 20, 25 years old. Whatever it is that the people who don't want me calling fights are thinking about me, they would probably think the same thing about John Pascal, Paulie Malignaggi, et cetera, as ring commodities. My past experience was to call the best fights among and between the best fighters in the world.
Hmm.
And if I were not in a position to call the best fights among and between the best fighters in the world, I really don't see the point. I don't need money. I don't need more public exposure. I don't need for people to recognize me when I walk down the street. All of that, I had plenty of that in the past. I went to 14 Olympics. I have a unique background as a broadcaster. So unless it were going to be something that would take me back to the same level at which I worked, or to some even higher pedestal of fulfillment and enrichment within the business, I can't see it. I love all of the fighters you mentioned. They were good people and great friends. I can still remember Jean Pascal bringing his
Well, he was
potted
fighting.
dog to our
He
fighters.
was fighting. He was fighting on the card. That's why I mentioned John Pascal was fighting on a card, and Roy Jones, Paulie Malignaggi, and Antonio Tarver were commentating. So I was just saying John Pascal was fighting on the
They're
card.
all friends.
Yeah.
That's a little sort of a clique that you just described there. I would call that Roy and his buddies.
Hmm.
And there's nobody in the world I love more than Roy Jones. He's like a brother to me. He is a brother to me. But that wouldn't be the kind of fight caller experience I would want at this stage of my career.
Hmm. Do you still keep in contact with like, because I've seen Max Kellerman occasionally is on ESPN. I see Larry Merchant in interviews. Do you keep in contact with any of these guys? Just like
Yeah,
talk to them?
to the degree that I can keep logical contact with Max, who's mostly in New York, and with Larry, who's in a building on Ocean Boulevard in Santa Monica, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, I talk to them, but not every week. It's not it's not as frequent as it used to be. I actually had well, actually still have. I have a mentee here in Chapel Hill, a young woman who transferred from University of New Hampshire to Carolina for the purpose of understudying me because she wants to become a network television sportscaster, and she realized intelligently that the frequent path now in the business for a woman to become a network television and sportscaster is that they begin on the sidelines. She Googled to find out who were some famous and prominent sideline reporters. She realized that I was the first person ever to do it. She also found out I was teaching a course in communications here at Carolina, and she wound up through a family connection transferring from New Hampshire to here can do hands-on mentoring to try to help her get to the place where she wants to be. She wound up being Max Kellerman's intern at ESPN all the summer of 2022. She spent the whole summer of 2022 in the ESPN building in Lower Manhattan and learning from Max. And I'm very proud that I was able to arrange that experience for her. Max and I will both be proud someday when she does become a network television sportscaster, because she's so determined and so willing to listen that I'm pretty sure she will. It's interesting because she wants to work at the highest possible level. She arrived here and said, I'm so excited that you're going to give me pointers and insight into how to think about sports. And I said, that's not what I'm going to do. You already know plenty about sports. You know more about who's likely to be drafted in the first round of the NFL draft than I do. You know more about what kind of coach it would take to unlock the keys to another Celtics championship than I do. She's a dyed-in-the-wool Celtics fan. And so what I'm going to teach you is how to elevate your language, how to rearrange your syntax, your vocabulary, your word choice, and how to never make a grammatical error when you're speaking so that you can operate at the highest level. By the way, I would call it, for her benefit, the Max Kellerman level. And she got it. She appreciated that. And now we have a wonderful relationship where every day she'll send me, is it this pronoun or that pronoun? And in what order, et cetera, et cetera. So I've, basically become a grammar instructor. But I think that that's what provides you with the undercurrent, the basis of security and self-possession and worldview that's necessary to operate at the highest level of broadcasting. You don't get it by using like every third or fourth word, which is what I hear from a lot of my students in the classroom. And I'm working with her to rearrange that too. But the bottom line is, what it really takes to be at the highest level, to be Hannah Storm, to be Jim Nance, to be Melissa Stark, is to know the language and use
Jim
it the
Lampley,
right way.
because it's funny hearing you
I don't think that's unfair to put me in that group, and I'm very proud that I would say yes. I think that I am capable of being the same person that those people have been and are now.
Well, you're a legend, and it's funny you talk about like the just phrases you use. My brother, he's not a big boxing fan. He's in law school right now, and we watch. I wanted to talk about Triple G for a second. It was the Triple G versus Lemieux fight, and we started laughing because when Triple G was landing so many punches, you said he's not missing, and we just laughed because we're like, it's funny, but. And then just some of the words that you and Max use, like you said, intrepid. Lemieux fights in a more intrepid style than this recently, and I was like, I'm assuming that means like come forward style, but like I was just like, it's just interesting some of the words you guys say. But one thing I always appreciate,
Max has a great vocabulary. Max grew up in Greenwich Village as the son of barefoot intellectuals. Max went to the Hunter School for Gifted Children. In fact, there are two coincidences within what you just mentioned. Coincidence number one, Gennady Golovkin, his twin brother Max,
April 8th.
and me, Jim Lampley, we all share the same birthday. We're
Mhm.
all born on April
April
8th.
8th. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one coincidence. The other coincidence is that when I first moved to New York to work for ABC Sports in the middle 1970s, my very first New York apartment was located at 70 East 96th Street, which is 96th Street between Madison and Park. It was a floor through apartment, meaning that you had a window on the front side that looked out over 96th Street, and you had a window on the back side that looked out at the block between 94th and 95th, and between Park Avenue and Madison Avenue. And that block is occupied by the Hunter School for Gifted Children. Max attended the Hunter School for Gifted Children, and he was in elementary or early junior high, I forget which, during the period of time when I lived in that apartment. And I had an office in that apartment that looked out the back of the building, had a window that overlooked the playground at the Hunter School for Gifted Children. And often when I got bored or tired doing whatever I was doing in the office, I would roll my chair over to the window and watch the kids play on the playground. There's no question. I mean, I don't have a specific indicator, but there's absolutely no question. It's not possible that I did not watch Max Kellerman play on the playground at
That's
the Hunter.
insane.
It
That
is.
is insane.
That's insane. And it's a marker of something stunning, which is how small New York can be. You know, how was I ever to know that years later, one of these kids was going to be my partner on HBO Boxing, because he, long before I did, had developed cachet and an identity as a student of boxing and an authority on boxing. I used to watch his public access cable television show,
Max on
Max
Boxing.
in New York.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I wanted to get two more questions in, and I wanted to thank you for, Gennady Golovkin's my favorite fighter, and the first time I ever saw him live was
Then that's my favorite broadcaster. That's why I'm your favorite broadcaster, is because you could tell how much I loved Golovkin, and what I loved most about Golovkin was the way he played with and toyed with the language, usually unconsciously, in those post-fight interviews. It was wildly entertaining. It was lovable. He had a way of expressing himself that was unique. There was no fighter in my boxing career, other than Mike Tyson, from whom you could so constantly expect that the post-fight interview was going to be memorable and entertaining. And Mike had that, and Golovkin had that, and of course, they were both great punchers too.
Yeah, and no, I wanted to say thank you though, because Triple G nowadays, I don't know if you go on boxing communities, he gets a lot of hate, and I had to do a whole series on my channel called Triple G's Resume, because everyone says, oh, Golovkin never fought anybody real. If you look at his opponents, they're all top 20 in middleweight, and then the Canelo fight, he won them both. I'm sorry, he won them both. If you look at the stats, he beat Canelo twice.
Well, I know a lot of people who share that opinion, and obviously those were both very close, very difficult fights to score. And one thing I've seen pretty constantly throughout my career is, if the fight is close, if it's difficult to score, if it's in Las Vegas, if it matches a Mexican star against a fighter from another culture, and most particularly if that fighter is from Eastern Europe, who the winner's going to be.
Andre Ward, Kovalev too.
Yeah, I cannot remember, frankly, ever seeing an Eastern European fighter being given the benefit of the doubt in a close fight in Las Vegas. And a lot of those Vegas judges are friends, and I respect them. But there was seemingly a cultural block there that did not allow, if you're Kovalev and you're Golovkin and you get the knockout, nothing they could do about that. But if it fell into the hands of scorers in Las Vegas, and one was a red, white, and blue American or a Mexican, that's where the money was. That's where the future income was. That's where the next big judging assignment might lie. not necessarily in Moscow or Kazakhstan, and or even on the East Coast. And so therefore, it was just bad luck that they were in the position that they were in.
And he made Canelo he waited Golovkin's age out. Did you see the third fight?
I did see the third fight, and Gennady was too old. Gennady
40,
was
yeah, 41.
Gennady was worn down, and Canelo is closer to his peak. And by the way, you might speculate, given that in my last episode of The Fight Game on HBO, I stated that while judges gave a draw and a victory to Canelo in the first two fights in Las Vegas, if you went on the web and gathered responses from all around the planet, it was very clear that the majority of the global audience believed that Gennady had won both fights. I'll stick to that till the day I die. I'm not talking about whether I thought he won both fights.
You probably can't say. You probably can't say because Canelo's such a big star.
With their feedback on the web, in responses, et cetera, made clear. I don't think you could deny it, that the global audience thought Gennady won both fights. They're not boxing judges. Boxing judges are professionals. I always say, try it sometime. You have 5 seconds from the moment the round is over to write a name on a piece of paper and hand it to the referee as he walks around the ring. You can't change your mind once those 5 seconds are over. You have to see with your naked eye who it is you're going to pick. It's not easy, you know, so I don't criticize judges for their difficulties or their instincts in judging fights, but I also think that there are cultural factors. So I said that on The Fight Game. I said, you know, the global audience believes that Gennady won both of the first two fights. Eventually, we get to the point where I'm out of my boxing chair at HBO, and now I could be hired by any streaming service, including DAZN, to call fights. And of course, the centerpiece of DAZN's boxing programming is Canelo. If the people who ran DAZN went to Canelo and said, you know, what do you think of us hiring Jim Lampley? It's not out of the question for me that my friend Canelo, who was my neighbor in San Diego, whom I like and respect, might have said, I don't want Jim Lampley. He just told his audience on The Fight Game that I lost both of the first two fights to Golovkin.
Yeah,
couldn't blame him for that. Could not blame him for that. And you know, don't.
They were close though. They were close. Canelo said that.
To say that, you know,
Canelo said they're close.
I don't know anything like that. I have no concrete information with which to say that happened. Canelo, if you are watching or somebody else is watching for you, I love you. I'm not saying that you deprived me of that chance because I just don't know. But if somebody asked you from the network, it's not illogical that you would have said that.
Yeah. Okay. I got 2 more questions for you. Then I'll because I
have to respect that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not criticizing.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm a Golovkin like super fanboy, so you can
But
expect.
You gotta like Canelo too, right?
Oh, of course I like Canelo. I like Canelo too,
fight.
but you know, Golovkin was the first fighter that got me really. Well, Pacquiao was, but Golovkin was the second. But so I have two more questions. First of all, your favorite fight of all time.
Favorite fight of all time. I still go back. You know, it's funny. The anniversary was a couple of days ago. I still go back to Gatti Ward 1. And, you know, we want to see passionate commitment. We want to see risk. Risk is at the heart of the sport. And there have been a lot of fights like that over the years. Robinson, LaMotta, various others that occupy that profile. But I never called a fight where blood-curdling risk was more visibly obvious and so much a part of the story as was the case for Gatti Ward 1. And, you know, one of the things I always say to people from outside the culture, people who do not love and understand boxing, and I've made this to women who have eventually changed their view once I tell them But when you see two guys go after each other in a blood-curdling, gut-wrenching, heart-in-your-throat kind of way over the course of a fight that goes the distance, and you see those two men at the sound of the bell that ends the last round, whether it's 15 or 12 rounds, fall into each other's arms and embrace. That's because at that moment, what they are feeling is about as close as two heterosexual men can get to love. They have learned to love each other over the course of that experience because they recognize each other's vulnerability. They recognize each other's courage. They recognize a form of kinship that really doesn't exist in the same way in any other sport. They breathe on each other. They sweat on each other. They swallow each other's blood and sweat. They know each other by the end of that fight better than their mothers do, and they know instinctively that it's something that they'll take to their graves. So there are lots of fights I've called that occupy that pro field. Bo Holyfield 1 is a tremendous example of that. Lots of others, but none was more visibly expressive of that particular ethic within the sport than Gaddy Ward 1. And of course, you go from there to the moment after their third fight when they insisted on going to the hospital in Atlantic City for examination in the same EMT truck. And, you know, and on and on and on to Mickey speaking at Arturo's funeral and all of the friendship elements that went with it after that. Again, once they've had that experience, they're never going to know another man as well as they know that man.
Especially 3 fights.
Yeah, exactly. And no other man is ever going to know them the way that they know each other after, as you say, those 3 fights.
That was beautiful. I'm gonna like cry now. Have you ever, because the way you expressed it, like I've done some boxing myself, sparring, it's always emotional afterwards, even when it's just sparring. Have you ever, it seems like you've boxed before, if you understand that. Have you ever done a little boxing back in the day, just like, or sparring?
About 2 rounds in summer camp when I was 9 or 10 years old with gloves on that felt like sandbags, and enough of a taste of the experience to know that I couldn't do that. So no, I've never done anything that would give me any firsthand understanding of what men do in a boxing ring. I've just watched it closely enough and spent enough time talking to them. You know, before every fight we did at HBO, before every major fight, and most of the undercard fights too, I would sit in a room with Larry and Roy, or Larry and George, whoever it was, Larry and Emmanuel, closest male friend I've ever had. And we would sit across the table from the fighters and talk to them face to face for, on schedule, 30 minutes each, sometimes longer. And people would ask me for weeks prior to big fights, who's going to win the fight? And I would say to them, I don't know. And you know, it's a highly unpredictable sport. I don't care how one-sided the matchup looks going in, but I'll tell you this. Once I have spent 30 minutes sitting across the table from them, looking into their eyes, watching their body language, hearing their answers to my question the day before the fight, then I think my prognostication record would be about 96%. Very, very seldom did I not know who was going to win the fight by the time we left that room. If Lennox Lewis had not managed to cuff Vitaly Klitschko's eye in such a way as to rip his eyelid open in the 6th round that night in Los Angeles, I'd have been wrong about that fight. But because Lennox did get in that particular right hand, I was right about that one too. And again, I would tell people, once I've been to the meeting, it's unfair for me to tell you who's going to win because I know too much I can't dishonor the fighters for what they've done in opening themselves up and telling me. But if you had that experience and you knew the right questions to ask, and you were sitting with somebody like Larry with all of his experience, somebody with Roy's experience or Emmanuel's experience, had that conversation, you walked out of that room knowing who was going to win the fight, no matter how close.
Man, it's just such an honor. Let me just say it's such an honor to have you. Uh, I'd love to do another interview after this. Like, I still have like one more short question, but you have a second under, you do have a firsthand, even though, like you said, you've never really like gotten into boxing like that. You do have that firsthand understanding. Maybe it's just the way your heart is or your brain is, but you do have that. Like, you fought before. You do have that, Jim.
Well, some of it is, you know, when I first started working with Larry, I understudied Larry and listened to him. And of course, I learned some things from Max. But the biggest thing probably is that I can honestly say I've never had closer male friends in my adult life than Emmanuel Steward and Roy Jones. I'm very, very close, or was very close to both of them. And so they would tell me things from the heart, not just from their hearts, from the heart of the sport, in such a way that I gathered illumination. I'll give you a perfect example. Before he died, and one night in Las Vegas, and by the way, he died in fall of 2012, so it's a long time ago. I was sitting at dinner with Emmanuel Steward, and I said, Emmanuel, I have heard recently, I understand that you've been working with Tyson Fury. And he said, yes. I said, why would you be interested in Tyson Fury? He looks to me like he's nothing other than a giant, clumsy oaf, couldn't possibly have the skills to be a great boxer. Emmanuel put down his fork. He paused for a second and he said, Jimbo, he will be the heavyweight champion of the world. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And oh, by the way, he might turn out to be an unbeaten and unbeatable heavyweight champion. I said, why would you say that? He said, well, first of all, he's nearly 7 feet tall. He's about 6'10", and his arms are longer than that profile would suggest. Second of all, his every first instinct in the ring is defensive. He's much more of a backup counterpuncher than he is a puncher. He's the last thing you expect a fighter that size and that dimension to be. Third of all, he has incredible hand skills and coordination. He can put punches together as a backup counterpuncher as well as any welterweight I ever trained. And third of all, at some point, he's going to develop the confidence and the self-possession to go forward and use all of that physical wherewithal to beat other people down. And when he does that, he will be basically unbeatable. Now, if Wilder couldn't beat him, I don't know who can. And it's a fun conversation that I've had sometimes with people in boxing. If you look back over the long history of the sport and you consider his size, his dimension, and his skills, the way Manuel described them, who would you pick to beat him? Lennox is the popular answer. Lennox is maybe the only guy who had the physical wherewithal, and he was faster than Fury. So maybe that would happen, but it's pretty hard to pick anybody else.
The time's just about up. We should definitely do a part 2 sometime if you're down. It was an honor to talk with you. And you're just amazing, man. A bunch of people are going to love this, and I appreciate your time, and you're just the best.
I appreciate being appreciated. And yeah, we should do it again sometime. Let some time go by so that we can watch some fights and have more to talk about.